Close your eyes and let the salt-kissed wind carry you back. The year is somewhere around 630 BCE. The world is smaller, slower, and shaped by poetry. You are standing on the island of Lesbos, a pearl floating in the deep blue of the Aegean Sea. Here, the days are warm and golden. The nights hum with lyre strings and the laughter of women gathering olives beneath moonlight. This is where she was born. Her name was Sappho, a name that once echoed from every corner of the Greek world. And tonight, we begin her story. To understand Sappho, we must understand her world. The island of Lesbos was no backwater. It was a cultural jewel, a land of wealthy merchant families, flourishing temples, and vibrant artistic life. In the city of Mytilene, noble women presided over households, conducted rituals to the gods, and educated their daughters in music, poetry, and dance. The wider world of Greece, however, was shifting. This was the archaic age, a time before Athens had philosophers, before democracy had a name. Men still ruled with swords and trade, but across the sea, the lyric poets were blooming. They did not chant of wars and gods, but of love, jealousy, longing, feelings, not fates. Sappho would become their muse. Sappho's family was among the aristocracy. Her father, though his name is debated, was likely a wealthy landowner or merchant. Her mother may have been named Claes, and Sappho would one day name her daughter the same. In their home, there were ivory combs and dyed silks, bowls of figs and honey, fresh bread with herbs. And always, the lyre. Girls in Lesbos learned more than housekeeping. They memorized Homer. They sang in choruses. They learned that words could weave worlds. And Sappho listened. Religion wrapped daily life like olive oil on skin. The gods were everywhere, on mountaintops and in salt spray, in the rustle of fig leaves and the fire of stars. But for Sappho, one goddess stood above all, Aphrodite, the divine of love and beauty. She would become Sappho's celestial companion, muse and protector. And in this sacred relationship, Sappho would do what no woman before her had done. She would speak her heart, not just to men, but to women, to herself, to the moon. So let the waves hush your thoughts now. Let the lyre's faint song drift through olive branches. Sappho's voice is near, soft, steady, sacred. Her journey begins here, on a starlit island in a world lit by poetry. The sky blushes with the first breath of morning. Soft pinks and sleepy blues melt into the sea. Somewhere in the quiet city of Mytilene, a young girl stands at the window of a stone house. She listens, not for birdsong or footsteps, but for silence. Her name is Sappho. And from the moment she could walk, she was drawn to the hush between the waves, to the invisible music of the world. Let your breath soften, and let us return to her earliest days, when words were still a mystery, and the moon was her oldest friend. Sappho's childhood was one of quiet privilege. Her family was noble, wealthy from trade in purple dye and olive oil. Their home overlooked the bay, where ships came and went like whispered stories. While boys trained with javelins, Sappho learned in a different arena, one of scrolls and song. She learned letters by candlelight, chanting vowels like prayers. She traced verses with a reed pen, sometimes spilling ink as she giggled. And from her first poem, just a line, barely more than a breath, her tutor paused, smiled, and said, "You have a poet's hand, little one, and a soul made of stars." In Lesbos, it was not uncommon for noble girls to learn music, poetry, and grace. But for Sappho, learning was not a formality. It was a calling. She studied under priestesses and poets, women who had lived lives of depth and rhythm. They taught her meter, metaphor, melody. They spoke of the goddess Aphrodite and of Eros, the fluttering power of desire. And always there was the lyre, strings that trembled like wind over harp reeds. She practiced until her fingertips were sore and her voice could rise and fall like tide water. Other girls admired her. Some adored her. They called her Sappho, an endearing whisper in the Doric tongue. But her deepest education came not from scrolls, but from solitude. She often slipped away at dusk to sit where the olive groves met the sea. There, she would whisper verses into the wind, poems not yet born, about longing and moonlight and the ache of beauty. Sometimes she wept without knowing why. Sometimes she laughed just because a line felt perfect. There's a story that one night she stayed out so long the moon herself seemed to pause, glowing just above the horizon, as if to listen. That night, Sappho wrote of silver light on bare shoulders, of a name spoken only once, of a kiss that lingered like time on warm bread. In the summers, Mytilene's temples filled with music and laughter. Feast days for the gods were also festivals for the heart. Sappho would often be asked to play, not just for worship, but for delight. Girls danced barefoot in flower crowns. The scent of roasted figs and barley honey filled the air. Elders clapped softly along as Sappho strummed and sang, her voice a silk thread weaving through the wind. Some say she ran a kind of school or sanctuary for girls, where young women came to be educated in music, art and rites of passage. A place where joy and reflection were part of growing up. Here, friendships formed that shaped her deepest verses, names that would echo in her poetry. Anactoria, Atthis, Gongila. As she grew, so did her mastery. Her mentors began to recite her lines. Travellers who passed through Lesbos carried her verses back across the sea. Her fame grew quietly, like ivy on marble. Not shouted, whispered, not crowned, sung. But Sappho did not write for the world. She wrote for the moment, for the heartbeat, for the breath between two people leaning close. Each word was a pebble dropped into the well of feeling, rippling outward into memory. Tonight, she sits once more by her window. The sea sighs below. The lamp glows gently on her writing hand. She is still just a girl, but already a poet. The sky warms with the breath of dawn. Fishermen unmoor their boats. The scent of figs and sea salt mingles in the morning air, and the city of Mytilene awakens. But above the harbour, in a quiet stone villa shaded by olive trees, a poet is already stirring. Her name is Sappho, and this is a day in her life. Let your mind settle gently as we follow her through sun and song, through rhythm and reverence, in a life woven by lyric. Sappho begins her day in silence, before the lyre, before the scroll. There is ritual. She kneels before a small shrine, a figure of Aphrodite carved in marble, soft petals scattered at her feet. Sappho lights a cone of incense. The smoke curls slowly upward, carrying her whispered words. Not grand prayers, but soft wishes. For clarity, for calm, for the courage to feel fully. She touches her forehead, then rises. Today, she will write. In the garden, the day is still. Sappho sits at a stone table, the curls of her hair pulled back loosely, a scroll unrolled before her. Her stylus hovers above the parchment. She listens, to the wind in the vines, to the faint echoes of laughter in the street, to the hush of a memory forming. Then, slowly, the words arrive. A poem to a beloved friend, a longing for someone who has sailed away, a line about the moon or the scent of warm skin in the sun. Each word chosen like a gemstone, each pause just as precious. By late morning, she is not alone. Young women gather, students, companions, perhaps former pupils, some with lyres in their laps, some with clay tablets and styluses, all with open hearts. They take turns reciting. Some giggle when they forget a line. Others blush at verses of desire. Sappho smiles gently, never mocking, always guiding. When one girl sings with trembling voice, Sappho lays a hand on her shoulder and says, "Even the gods tremble when beauty meets truth." There is no performance here, only presence. At noon, they walk to the temple. Today is a feast for the Graces, goddesses of charm, creativity, and beauty. Sappho leads the hymn, her voice low but clear. It is not a grand temple like Athens, but a sacred one, nestled by the sea. Its marble glows with sunlight. Its altar blooms with offerings, honey cakes, rose petals, small figures of clay. She sings not to be heard by crowds, but to be heard by the divine. By evening, the house is still again. The sun lowers behind distant hills. Long shadows stretch across tiled floors. Sappho reviews her work. Some lines she keeps, some she lets go. She dines simply. Goat cheese, olives, barley bread, fresh herbs in oil. A fig or two for sweetness. A sip of dark wine. No feast, just nourishment. The taste of a poem lingers longer than food. And then, the stars. She climbs to the rooftop, a lamp flickering at her side. The sea is black velvet, the sky stitched with silver. She does not write now, she simply watches. Somewhere across the water, someone she once loved may be doing the same. She whispers a final verse into the wind, not to preserve it, just to let it go. This is her life, not of battles or crowns, but of melody, of emotion, of meaning. A life of rhythm, a life of softness. She leaves no monuments, only moments. And yet, thousands of years later, her breath still stirs in syllables. Close your eyes and listen, not with your ears, but with your memory. The wind stirs softly through olive trees. A lyre hums somewhere far away. And on the island of Lesbos, the echo of a woman's voice lingers. Her name was Sappho. And though her poems have nearly vanished into dust, her spirit still sings. The end of Sappho's life is veiled in silence. Some say she lived into old age, writing until her hair was silver and her fingers moved slower across parchment. Others, less kindly, told tales of heartbreak. of a leap from the cliffs of Leucadia for the love of a man who would not return it. But perhaps that was just a myth. A legend made to make her pain more palatable, to silence a voice that spoke too freely. What is certain is that her works were once vast. 9 volumes, they say. Scrolls filled with hymns, elegies, wedding songs, and whispers. Now, only fragments remain. A word, a line, a breath caught in time. For centuries, her poetry travelled from voice to voice, from one scroll to the next. But then came the long forgetting. As new empires rose, the tongues changed. The gods changed. And those who copied the old texts chose Plato and Homer, the warriors and the wise. But not the woman who sang of desire. Her verses were lost to fire, to neglect, to the quiet cruelty of time. Some were dismissed as improper, others hidden, because they spoke of love between women. Too tender, too honest, too human. But the earth remembers, and so, thousands of years later, in the dry sands of Egypt, fragments of her voice were found, preserved in broken jars, in forgotten tombs. A single word, a partial line, a torn hymn. Each rediscovery, like a heartbeat, returning after centuries of silence. And the scholars gathered. They studied. They translated. They listened. They found that even in fragments, Sappho's words glowed, like embers that refused to die. Today, her name is spoken in classrooms. Her verses are sung in new tongues. Her breath still stirs in poetry and song. She has inspired writers, artists, and dreamers, from Byron to Virginia Woolf, from ancient chorus to modern page. Her island, Lesbos, now lives in the imagination as a place of lyric and longing, of womanhood and voice, of beauty reclaimed. In Mytilene, there stands a statue. It bears her name, not just Sappho the poet, but Sappho the symbol. Of all the voices history tried to erase, she is the one that returned. And though we have lost her full songs, we have not lost their soul. Her words remain like perfume in the air, fleeting, delicate, unforgettable. And so now, dear listener, as the wind carries the sound of distant waves and the stars shimmer like vowels in a forgotten alphabet, know this: Sappho still sings, not through scrolls, not through statues, but through you. Every time a woman dares to speak her longing, every time a poem cradles the heart, every time silence is broken by a truth too tender to be denied, Sappho is there. Her lyre may be quiet, but her echo never ends. Close your eyes. Let her whisper wrap you like linen in the dark. And sleep, dear heart, for the poet is watching.